Everybody, welcome in to Vikings Now by Chat Sports. I am your host, Patrick Siepman, and we are bringing you the news about Kirk Cousins testing positive for COVID-19. Adam Schefter tweeted out and that he will have to miss the first preseason game against the Las Vegas Raiders, and he will also have to isolate by himself for 5 whole days. And if you're dating back to last season, actually last training camp, if you remember, Kirk Cousins did have to miss 5 games due to COVID, very similar situations. But how this kind of started yesterday in practice, apparently Cousins wasn't feeling well, so he didn't show up to practice. Anyways, he ended up getting tested for COVID, and ended up testing positive. But also, Cousins last season, he did miss the second Packers game due to COVID. And with this NFL offseason and this Vikings offseason progressing, a lot of the, news was from the Vikings camp was the kind of relationship between Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins. And if you guys if we can flash back into time right now, this was the root of the problem of the Kirk Cousins-Mike Zimmer relationship. Zimmer openly blasted Cousins last year, saying he should be vaccinated, everybody should be without actually coming out and saying it. He was always just not a fan of Cousins not being vaxxed, mainly because Zimmer probably knew he was on the hot seat, and he also knew if Cousins would have to miss a game, it would not be good for the Vikings, and that's kind of what happened in the second Packers game late last year when the Vikings, I think they probably had a point-something% chance to make the playoffs, but they needed to go into Green Bay, win out the rest of their games. And in that Green Bay game with no Cousins, they ended up getting smoked. It was an absolute blowout. And I think with this Kirk Cousins testing positive for COVID, I think there could be talks of people saying, oh, since Kellen Mond and Sean Manniom have looked so bad, if Kirk were to miss time and test positive for COVID during the year, should we bring in another quarterback? And I'll address that later on. But first, I want you guys to get down in the comments, answer this for me. Are you worried about Kirk Cousins testing positive for COVID? Or are you kind of in the position I am, and I'll explain my reasoning why after this, is that, yes, he has COVID, it's unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world. Or are you nervous that Kirk, during the season, he will have to miss a big-time game if he were to test positive? Could you imagine if it was for the second Packers game this year with the expectations the Vikings have and the season I think the Vikings are going to have? So like I was saying earlier, I am not too worried about this. I think, yes, it sucks. Kevin O'Connell, he's bringing in that new Sean McVay Rams offense. And yes, it would be ideal if Cousins could get every little single snap from the practices. And yes, practice makes perfect, and more reps and more practice will allow him to grow in the system. So yes, I get that point. But also, knowing the type of guy Kirk Cousins is and knowing the way he prepares just for games that we've seen it over and over again the past couple of years, whatever you think of him as a quarterback, he is always one of the most prepared guys in the league every single week. And also a very kind of not famous Viking story that broke this offseason was when the new general manager and the new head coach were brought into the organization, and they got rid of Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer. Apparently Kirk Cousins, he held a meeting listing every little thing that went wrong. So it kind of shows the type of guy he is, that he does take that extra step. So kind of the point being made here is that I think even though he will have COVID, or he does have COVID and will have to isolate for 5 days, I think he could still prepare. He can still watch film all day long on the Sean McVay offense that he is learning and this new system, but it's not the end of the world. And also, if we can look back to last preseason, the Rams played nobody. Matt Stafford didn't play a single snap in preseason. And I know you might be saying, well, he probably started off slow. If he didn't get any reps in preseason, he probably started off slow. No, he had 3 touchdowns and 156 passer rating in his Rams debut in a whole new system against the Chicago Bears defense on Sunday night. It was fantastic. It was a great performance. And am I saying that Cousins will go out there week 1, throw for 3 touchdowns with 156 or 56 passer rating? I hope so, but probably not. But not the end of the world. He's going to just have to miss these 5 days. I am worried if it is a big-time game during the year, if Cousins were to test positive. It's really one of those things that's unfortunate. But I also know, since the NFL isn't going to be requiring people to get tested throughout the week, I'm sure it could be one of those things where the Vikings could say, Kirk, if you have the sniffles today, we might not test you. We'll just let this play out. But we'll see. We'll see how the Vikings handle this. Obviously, there could be some legal issues with that. But I don't think it's the end of the world. Now, Kellen Mond. I want to transition to him because he is somebody we do need to talk about. And he is somebody, if anybody could take a positive out of Kirk Cousins testing positive for COVID, it's Kellen Mond. Kellen Mond needs to show something this preseason. And Kellen Mond, with ability now, and he should, I'll make this point first. Kellen Mond should be getting all the first team reps. It should not go to Sean Mannion. We know what Sean Mannion is for the Vikings. He is Kirk Cousins' study buddy. We know Sean Mannion. We know what he brings. He's a good guy. I'm not trying to bash on Sean Mannion too much, but Sean Mannion is Sean Mannion. We know what we have in Sean Mannion. Kellen Mond, on the other hand, we don't really know what we have with Kellen Mond. That's why I feel like with all the reports coming out from camp that he's looked awful and he hasn't really had a good start to his NFL career, I think this could be a moment in year 2. Give him some confidence. Say, hey, Kellen, you're taking all over the first team reps at practice and you are going to be the starter week 1 versus the Raiders. That's personally how I would handle it. We'll see what KOC, Kevin O'Connell, decides to do with Kellen Mond. But I do think for Kellen, this could give him extreme confidence. When you are throwing the guys like Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and KJ Osborne, and you have Dalvin Cook in your backfield, it can feel pretty motivating, I'm sure, for Kellen Mond, and it could unlock maybe something that we haven't seen before. So, yes, I do think if there is one positive coming out of this, it could be Kellen Mond. And, again, like I was saying, no reason for Sean Mannion to get any of the first team reps at practice. I think if you want one of your quarterbacks running with the ones, it's Kellen Mond. Because we saw last year, I think people in the NFL, when you bring in a backup quarterback, you want him to be similar to your starting quarterback in the terms of, with nowadays in the NFL, we have so many different types of styles of quarterbacks. You got guys that look like Kyler Murray, and then you still got guys that play the game at the highest level like Tom Brady. So Sean Mannion and Kirk Cousins, their playing styles are very similar. However, last year against the Packers, when Sean Mannion, yes, the Vikings, I think they had like a .something% chance to make the playoffs after that or before that game. So it's not like that game meant absolutely nothing. Sean Mannion stepped in and it was awful. It was a cold day in Lambeau and we could barely move the football. So again, I think Mond, he should be getting all the first team reps. But then we got to ask this question. If Kellen Mond does look terrible in camp or during these practices where he is getting the first team reps, do you bring in another quarterback? Is that something where if your backup position is so awful right now, would the Vikings consider bringing a backup quarterback? Personally, I don't think so. I think that the Vikings are kind of under the mindset where, if Kirk were, knock on wood, if he were would have to miss time during the year, it would be tough if you had to bring in, Sean Mannion or Kellen Mond. But I'm hoping Kellen Mond shows us Vikings fans something. Thank you guys for watching this video. Kirk tested positive for COVID. We'll have to isolate for 5 days. Hopefully, this is not an issue going on in the future. Thank you guys for watching. Like the video and subscribe to Vikings Now because we get you content like this as immediately as it happens. Thank you guys so much. See you guys next time.